What's up, soldiers? Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you guys here in the kitchen with me. Rewind, repeat, recycle, reuse. No, none of those things. Back in 2009, I shared a classic recipe for Caribbean style stewed pork, or what we call stew pork. Some people call it brown stew. That recipe is one of those I wanted to redo, and I told you guys I'll be redoing some of those recipes, those older recipes. So tonight, today, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are, we are doing Caribbean style stew pork. You're gonna love this one, man. In a large bowl here, I've got about 6 pounds of pork. You can use any cheap cut of pork. It just so happened pork chops were on sale, and that's what I use. So you'll see the bones and everything. The bones will give it a nice flavor. If you don't want to include the bones, that's fine, but you need the pieces to be cut up into about 1-inch pieces or so. Not too big, not too small. Well, smaller the better, to be honest with you. And a bit of fat, that is perfect. What I also did was I used the juice of 2 lemons and cool water, and I washed it really good. Now, you're wondering why? It has a smell. There will be a smell. Plus, we need to clean our meat, and that is what we do in the Caribbean. When you use a saw to cut the pork chops, these bones will have little bone fragments, and you really want to wash that out. I'm not trying to get you guys to eat that. And the marinade is simple. Salt. And it may look like a lot of salt, but there is quite a bit of pork in here. That is sea salt that I use there. We will need black pepper. And this is a classic way to season meats in the Caribbean. You won't see all-purpose seasoning. You won't see garlic powder, onion powder, all those different powders. You will see a freshness about things and a simplicity about things. Once you start seeing that all-purpose seasoning bowl, I was about to say bowl something, but you know, I'm not a big fan of that because that is just loaded with sodium more than anything else. A little Worcestershire, yeah. Non-Caribbean, but I grew up seeing my mom and her mom before her use that Worcestershire in there. A little Angostura Bitters. If you know, you know, you won't be questioning. And I've got here Caribbean green seasoning. 1 tablespoon. 2 tablespoons of that. Now, we're not done yet. I like it spicy, so 2 scotch bonnet peppers. Seeds and everything, cut back on that if you're not a fan of heat. I like heat, so that's why I use 2. The other thing you can do is to remove, and please wear gloves, the seeds and the white membrane surrounding the seeds. A lot of heat there. You can cut that out and discard it. Wash your hands with soap and water immediately after. An onion sliced up, and some of you may question this, a tomato, a large tomato sliced up. And the reason for that tomato being in there, other than having me thicken the gravy near the end, the acidity, because the pork is fatty, we need that bit of acid in there to help bring everything together and to afford us a level of balance when it comes to flavors. We're going to give this a mix, and typically you would allow this to marinate overnight. We're just going to do half an hour to 1 hour, and then we're going to get to cooking because I man got to film, I man got to eat. Irie? I've got a nice big heavy solid pot on a high heat. We're going to go in with a tablespoon of olive oil. If you want to use vegetable oil, by all means use vegetable oil. If you want to use coconut oil, that is your thing. I man not hating. My pot is hot right away. We're going to go in with 2.5 tablespoons of brown sugar. If you've seen me in the past do Caribbean style brown stew, well, I guess this is what we call brown stew. What will happen here is the sugar will melt. It will go a sort of a caramelized color all the way up to amber. It's going to go frothy, then it's going to go amber. Before it goes black, that's when we want to add the seasoned pork to the pot. Now, if you're new to Caribbean cooking and you're wondering, will this be a sweet dish? Absolutely not. But it's imperative that we pay attention here Two things. My stove, and I know your stove will have hot spots. And you will notice over here is getting darker. Over here is getting darker faster than the rest of the pot. I like to move it around because we want that even browning to happen. And two, you don't want it to burn. If it burns, shut it down. If that goes black, shut it down. Allow it to cool, wash the pot. Allow it to cool, wash the pot, and start over. If it burns on you, if it goes black on you, you will get bitter tasting stew pork to the point where you will not be able to eat it. There will be no fun in that. So keep moving that around because I want to get everything nice and even. It will go smoky, as you can see. You really can't control that at this point. And it's important that the spoon that you're using is dry. Oil, melted sugar, man, that's dangerous. Yeah, I'm just saying. It's beautiful there, so now is where we're going to start adding that seasoned pork to the mix here. And I'm going to give that a stir. And I'm going to keep adding. Now you will notice there's quite a bit of pork here. This, when I do this dish, I like doing it in quite a big quantity because the leftovers, well, there'll be about half of this will be left over. Put it into Ziploc bags, or freezer bags, or if you have a seal, vacuum sealer thing, you rub that, and you know, when you're ready to eat stew pork again, you have it already waiting there for you, just a matter of throwing it out. It will take about 5 minutes from that high heat to come up to a boil. And you will notice it will start sprouting up a lot of its own liquid. So what we're going to do is turn that down to a rolling boil. We're going to put the lid on it, slightly ajar, and let that cook for about 15 minutes or so. We got that space there for it to vent. We're starting to see that rich color a good stew pork is supposed to have. We're going to intensify that color now by doing two things. We're going to crank up the heat to high to burn off all that liquid, and to help in the process, we're going to leave the lid off now. We really want to intensify that color and that flavor. So, you got to get rid of all that liquid. If we can get back to the oil that we started with, that is the perfect scenario. Got a serious bubble happening now on that high heat. And as that liquid burns up, we're going to add some more flavor, some more depth of flavor. And I have here 3 pimento peppers, which are also called seasoning peppers. They were in the freezer. If you notice that they collapsed, and now they were in the freezer. I grew them in my garden. If you can't find pimento peppers, don't stress. If you can, by all means do so. I've got some fresh thyme. Yeah, the Caribbean green seasoning already got thyme and everything in there, but I like adding more and building more on that flavor. And in my humble opinion, one of the key ingredients in a good Caribbean style or Trinbago stew pork, ginger. I'm going to grate in a ton of that ginger. Now be mindful, that ginger is going to give it a sort of a peppery note as well. I'm going to continue grating that in there. And what doesn't grate, the fibers, that fiber is going in there as well too. Now we're still trying to burn off all that liquid, yeah? And speaking about liquid, in the same bowl, if you still have it, where you marinated the pork, add about 6 cups of water just to pick up any remaining marinade. You're going to have to braise this because this is where all that flavor happens. Next up, you need to make sure it's fully cooked, fork tender, and just bursting with juicy niceness. But for now, we still got a ton of liquid to burn off in there. Even on that high heat, it will take quite a few minutes to burn off all that liquid. And I don't know if you guys can see, but we got the oils that we started off with. Plus, because we use a fatty piece of pork, and I do recommend that. That's one of the few times I will tell you, the fat in this does play a part. I ain't gonna lie. Now here's where heat's still on high. We're gonna add the water back to the pot now. We're going to give that a stir, like so. And we're going to bring that back up to a boil and then reduce it to a rolling boil with the lid slightly ajar until everything is nice and tender. Once we are tender, then we'll burn off the liquid to the sort of the consistency of the gravy that you want. But for the most part, that is where we're at right now. That is where we need to be, bringing it up to a boil. It's been going now for 35 minutes. And here's where we're going to start personalizing things. You have to check to see if the pork is tender, because in Canada the pork gets tender relatively fast compared to when I'm in the Caribbean for some reason or the other. The other personalization, check it for salt and adjust it to your own liking. And in my case here, there's a lot of gravy. I want that to cook down quite a bit more. I want it a little bit more thicker. Now, as a kid growing up on the islands, Mommy would always make stew pork for us. Well, not just for us, but it was also one of the most requested things when her great uncle would visit. He loved her stew pork. Mommy never left gravy. She always wanted it, and according to her, to this day, all this liquid gotta burn off, and that's when that stew pork is gonna taste even better. Sup, soldiers? Listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me. Email address down here. I mean, trying to tell people the email address, them butts will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pot. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irie? Irie. Now, with that said, my gravy is where I want it to be. I am eating this with some boiled white yam, and my daughters are having this with boiled rice. We need that gravy. A little bit of greenery just to brighten things up. Give that a quick stir, turn off that stove. Stewed pork. Uncle Chris just dropped it like it's hot. I do hope you guys give this recipe a try. And remember, taste it for salt, adjust it, and adjust the gravy to your own liking. Irie? Irie.